Welcome to the Journey to Authentic Living podcast. This is your success mindset coach, Sandra Rojo, and today I'm really excited. We have a wonderful guest, Clifford Starks. Let me tell you a little bit about Cliff. So he graduated from ASU in kinesiology and fought in the UFC. And for someone or some of you who don't know what that acronym means, it's the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Did I get that right?
You did.
Okay, all right. He currently is a personal trainer and mentor and motivational speaker. He is also a father and a husband. And so a warm welcome, Cliff.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, welcome. I'm really excited to have you here. So tell us a little bit about how you got into the UFC.
Well, it was funny. I just missed competing, hadn't done it for a while, and I figured, why not give it a try, see if I was good at it or not. And my coach actually thought my goals were a little bit too ambitious because I wanted to get into the UFC in less than a year.
Oh.
And he sat me down and he goes, the UFC is where the best in the world fight. And to do it in less than a year, that's pretty damn hard. Like, if it's almost damn near impossible.
Right.
And I respected him as a coach because he's gotten several people into the UFC. I think he's gotten 23 or 24 guys into the UFC. But I didn't back down on my belief of being able to get there in less than a year. And I told him, you know, I respect you, but I have to try. I just have to try to get in that time frame just to see. Mm-hmm. And surprisingly enough, I ended up getting there.
Wow,
in 10
that's
months.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. And what was it like actually fighting?
It was one of the best experiences I ever had because as I've gone through life, the most important thing is mindset. If you have the correct mindset, you can do anything. Mm-hmm. And you hear it often, but some people don't know how to really take that experience to a whole new level.
That's
right. A fighter, as a fighter, there's so many things that you have to do and put together, especially not only as a fighter, but as a trained fighter, because other trained fighters are doing the exact same thing. So the details are really in the minute inches. Like, it's small stuff that you have to put together.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And, you know, my audience they're really into, understanding more a success mindset and understanding motivation and behavior and how we are influenced by others and they influence other people as well, their environment and so forth. And so I find this very interesting. Can you give an example about that? Because I think there are a lot of people struggling out there to just understand what it's like to really persevere, right? And keep the discipline in whatever they're doing. They might not be fighting, right, inside the UFC, but they are having some challenges maybe in their business or maybe trying to publish a book, or even just making it out of bed. So what are some small steps? What can you show us or tell us what that was like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very individualistic. And so I think one of the most important things to do is to realize what type of person you are. And when you can step back and really ask yourself, who am I, by yourself, you will get answers that you may not have seen before. And so I know of three types of people. There's the ones who, the second they take action, they're going for it. They're just going to do it. Then there's people who need small incremental steps. So they say you can't eat an elephant whole. You have to eat it one bite at a time. And some people need those small incremental steps. And you also have those people who need to create journals and write it down. If they write it down, they'll get it done. And so out of those three type of people, and sometimes you could be a little bit of all three. You might need a little bit of all three. And understanding yourself is the first part, and that's really the hardest part. It's funny because you would think understanding yourself would be easy, but I kind of think of it like we breathe regularly, right? So to know if you're in shape or out of shape, you have to actually exercise, and then you'll know. But you don't know that you're out of shape if you've never exercised. You think you're okay because, yeah, I can breathe just fine. And that's where it gets kind of convoluted. People get themselves in trouble because they think they know what they don't know, because they only know the small world that they've put themselves into, instead of venturing out and seeing how far they really are at the moment. And knowing that gives them the power to do more with it. It doesn't weaken them, but it scares people because that's hard to do at first.
Yeah, and I think, really that's my business in helping people, right? To discover
Mm-hmm.
really their true self or their authentic self. I know that's a big buzzword now, and authenticity means different things to different people, kind of what you were saying as well. It just depends on the individual. And I think understanding oneself is a huge element, especially because we have social media and we have television, and a lot of people, even adults, don't always know exactly what direction to take, or maybe, how it is that they want to move into a more authentic or true self way. And so they're trying to kind of keep up with the Joneses, if you will, right? And we're so different. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I would love to be in Will Smith's position because, not only is he good looking and he's got money and he's motivated and he's got a wonderful family, well, I'm not him, right? And so I can't try to achieve what he has, in the sense of it's not going to just happen tomorrow or a month from now, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we're all born in different circumstances, and I think success means different things as well for different people. We don't
Yes.
have to have meaning in our life by becoming famous, which I'm not saying you're saying at all, but just sort of adding to that. And
Mm-hmm.
so you're right. I think that sometimes we don't, especially working with people. One thing that you and I do have in common, even though I'm not a fitness trainer, I worked a lot in health and wellness,
Yeah.
and helping people with chronic illnesses and really pretty obese people, and trying to help them so-called lose weight. But it's never about the weight, right? These are these limiting beliefs and what we believe about ourselves and how we think we can move forward. So I find what you're saying very interesting. And, was that always easy for you growing up? Do you think you always had this sort of persevering sort of mindset? You always believed in yourself?
I think our environment helps create that in us. So I think we all have special gifts, but sometimes people don't realize their gifts until much later in life. I was a kid in a school it was in Ahwatukee, and I was the only black kid there. And the thing with being a kid, kids want to fit in. Like
Yeah.
that's the first thing. It's about fitting in. And I couldn't possibly fit in just because of the color of my skin. And it's not that I couldn't fit in, it's that I was a kid and couldn't understand, and they were kids too.
Yeah.
So no one was wrong in their way of thinking, but they looked at it they could clearly see from their eyes, I looked different. And so the fact that I look different, it allows people to judge easier. And
Mhm.
I took that and I built strength from it instead of being broken down from it. I took it in a way that I said, the only person who's going to get me through life is me. The only person that's going to empower me is me. And I ran with it. And
Yeah.
so I ran with that at a very young age. And I know a lot of people don't necessarily do that,
Mm-mm.
but I don't think people necessarily have been in the circumstances that I have been in. And if people were, they could do that too.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I relate. I mean, I was born and raised in more of a Caucasian neighborhood and so forth, but I was Latino, and so
Mm-hmm.
in our home we spoke Spanish and we went English, of course, and so. But I come from a background where my parents really did believe as well in education and being well mannered and proper and respectful and so forth, and so I think that that kind of helped instill a little bit more self-esteem. But I also noticed that I looked different at times. My hair was different. The texture of
Mm-hmm.
my hair, even I
Yeah.
remember as a kid thinking like, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I had beautiful hair. It was very thick and long. And so, but yeah, I definitely was a little different. But it is interesting that you are talking about that. Did you have any influences though? Because being a kid and having that awareness, definitely there's wisdom there, but I'm sure you must have had someone as well to help you along the way to give you that strength. Or are you saying that you just cultivated that on your own?
I definitely had a couple of major influences. So I have one guy called the sperm donor. And he came in and came out of my life just as fast.
Wow.
And then I had my mom, who was always there for me
Hmm.
and always believed in me. And then I had he's my dad, because dad is a definition. It's not
Hmm.
your blood.
That's right.
It's how you treat someone. And he treated me as if I was his blood, even when I wasn't. And that was really powerful to me. And
When
so
did
I
he come
got
into
to it.
your life, Cliff? When did he come into your life?
I was 6 when he
Okay.
came into my life. Yeah. And he he stood by me no matter what. And he let me be me. It wasn't they had their rules just like all parents should, but they let me explore and be creative and kind of learn things on my own, because that's what you have to do in life. You got to kind of learn and discover and grow.
So
And there was
was this dad, obviously he's your father, and I totally agree with that definition.
Yeah,
Was he black or is black? I'm not sure. It sounds like is he deceased?
he's black. No, he's still with me.
Oh, good.
He's still
Okay.
with me. Absolutely, yeah.
All right. So
Doing his
then you
thing.
had an influence, you had someone, even though you were going to school, what sounds like predominantly, I don't know, I'm making an assumption you're Caucasian or Asian or whatever, but so now you have somebody in your life that's a male role model, black man who is,
Yeah,
yeah. So,
yeah.
mhm.
Well, I think like, because eventually we all get to an experience when we realize we're all way more the same than we're different.
Oh, totally. I'm with
That's
you with
why
that one.
yeah, I look at us as kids, and I said, well, we were all kids.
Right.
So as kids, it's like, well, he's black, so he's different. And even through adulthood, we do hold on to some of those ignorances,
Hmm.
and so those ignorances need to be broken. But the truth of the matter is, we all have weaknesses within us, and we all have blind spots within us. And with everyone having a blind spot, everyone has a place where they see very clearly too. And so that's where strength can come out. Like even my whole thing being greatness within, when a person is feeling truly great about themselves, they have no room to hate on other people.
I
They're
agree.
too busy. Yeah, they're too busy going in on their own greatness. They don't have time.
But I think it's like what you said, it really comes, both of us are real big believers in the mindset and changing our perception, because our perception is reality and reality is
Mm-hmm.
perception. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and I think it's really important, especially now with the climate of our society, to really be able to take a step back. And I think, like you said, when we are with, not necessarily looking for television uh, to give us that role model, but by being able to really be within the community. And it sounds like your dad gave you that. I remember you and I were talking on the phone a few weeks ago, And
Mhm.
you said something that just was so beautiful, especially because we're talking about, both of us are considered minorities, although I don't think that that's really the case anymore. I think that we're, I think we're going to start seeing here a shift and just like stop calling people minorities. I mean, but just for the sake of it and for the
Yeah.
audience and so forth, right? Being sort of called and even that has a connotation to it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
even just a subliminal message to say to someone, well, a minority and so forth. But the bottom
Mhm.
line is I really actually don't believe in that. I believe in trying to help others achieve what they can regardless of their color. But
Yeah.
and I just went off on a tangent here, but what I really like is that your mindset, and that's the way my dad did it too. It sounds like we both had these really good influences, and it sounds also like your mom was very supportive of her husband, right?
Mhm.
And helping, and my parents too. It was very creative, it was very exploring, and so forth. And so it sounds like you really had this really great upbringing, which is kudos to you, because I think that now you're going to pass that on to your child. Um, and I think that that's a great thing, right? To be able to say,
Yeah.
hey, we're not, I mean, we're all victims of something, but to come out of that sort of, oh, poor me, and oh, I can't do it because of the color of my skin, or oh, I can't do it because I'm short or because I'm heavier or whatever, and
Absolutely.
just, yeah, and just be able to say, and I saw recently on the Instagram, because we follow each other on Instagram, that you're just, I mean, you have these beautiful, posts about, how you're still competing and how you're really active. And I saw your beautiful son, I think he's 2 years old, right?
Yeah.
And seeing him there and just really being a role model, Cliff. I mean, this is really what we need. We need people in the community, uh, in whatever state they're in. So what motivates you now? What's motivating to you as far as work?
So this happened to me as a teenager. And I still kind of get choked up about it when I talk about it. Um, but I had a man who he became my grandfather, so he wasn't not by blood, but he ended up marrying my grandmother, who was my blood side, of course. So he married my grandmother, and they didn't like each other. And I looked at it, and I'm just kind of like, we're so social. Like, human beings are so unbelievably social that they will stay with someone they don't even like
Hmm.
and hold on to it. And this man ended up getting cancer, and he's on his deathbed.
Hmm.
And my mom reached out to his side of the family,
Hmm.
and no one came. No one came. He was on his own. And he had created his own reality. Like, because he was a hateful, angry, bitter person.
Oh my goodness.
And I ended up liking the guy because I saw past it. And it's
Hmm.
just hate and darkness and anger, you know? And sometimes people just don't know how to express it properly. They don't know how to let it go. And it takes a really strong individual to to be around that kind of darkness
Right.
and bring light into them. And I mean, I saw it. There were times where you could see like glimpses of it because that's the human spirit too. It's both. We have the duality of light and darkness, and sometimes we're filled with a lot of darkness and we don't know how to release it. And so when he was on his deathbed, it was one of the hardest things to watch, a man crying, "I don't want to die," and having no one there to really talk him through it. So I don't know if there's a heaven and a hell on the other side, but I know that was hell there for him to
Hmm.
lay on his deathbed basically by himself. It was me and my mom were the only ones there watching him. And this was a man who had several kids, and they knew he was going, but that's how much hurt he had created, to the point people didn't even want to be there for him anymore. And so my message is about just reminding people to be conscious of one another. And sometimes it's hard for people to do, especially in really dark places. But I'm telling you, there's a power that everybody has, and it is the power of light. And to have true power of light isn't to say you're going to be just happy and go lucky all the time, but it's to have strength for people who do not have it at that time, to have strength for people who are in dark places and who are hurting and who want to break everything down. Because when you have strength for those kind of people, it'll remind them to have strength for themselves too. Because
Well, and
I would never want to
yeah.
see something like that happen again, ever. Not in my life, at least.
Well, and I think it's actually happening a lot more than we want to
Yeah.
admit. And I was just talking to my husband. We were going on a really rigorous walk this morning, and we were talking about different things. We like to sort of philosophize. And the bottom line is that we have to take care of our own negative triggers, and we have to stop blaming everybody else for the suffering and pain that we're going through. It is
Mhm.
true that others can maybe affect us a certain way, but at the end of the day, we only have control over ourselves. We only have control. And believe me, it's not about, by the way, ignoring the pain and suffering that we carry inside of ourselves. The emotional pain is what I'm really speaking about. Um,
Mhm.
Everyone has to start somewhere. It's about resolving and healing those things.
Mhm.
And I think that it kind of goes what you say before. It's that greatness, and it's um, when we learn to take responsibility. And I think that's a hard concept for a lot of people. It's a hard concept to articulate to people, and it's a hard concept to actually practice. And that
Yeah.
is that when people say take responsibility for your actions, for your words, for your thoughts, that doesn't mean perfect. That doesn't mean, like you said, happy-go-lucky. That doesn't mean that, oh, we're going to literally put our hands on our ears like a 3-year-old and say, I don't want to hear anything negative.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
means knowing that the darkness exists, but at the same time, we are the ones that break through our own darkness. And by breaking through our own darkness, are we then able to have that ripple effect out into the world? And I think what you're saying, Cliff, is, first of all, I really commend you for the consciousness that you have in this particular situation. I think it's really what's called for.
Yeah. Thank
But
you.
yeah, so I think it's really wonderful, and you are correct. I mean, at least I believe what you're saying, because I embrace that same, philosophy, and it's hard. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that you're positively impacting the people around you as a personal trainer and so forth. Which then I would like to ask, when people are struggling to even become more fit, right? Because I would imagine, and you can tell me otherwise if you don't think this, but if you are trying to get physically fit and more healthy and active, and the individual's not quite there, I mean, it's the mindset as well, right? That has to come into play.
Yeah, the mindset's huge. It really is everything. So in kinesiology, we focus on the study of movement, but we also focus on psychology too. And so this is a psychological game at the end of the day, because people said if you just knowing was enough, everyone would be millionaires with six packs. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? And so what that really comes down to is putting in and implementing the action. And the action comes with having purpose. See, people need purpose first before they can act. And knowing what your purpose is sometimes harder for others, because they've never experienced what it feels like. And I mean, one of the reasons that the self-development area is so saturated is because that is our purpose. It's everyone's purpose to help one another. But now what everyone's trying to do is help one another and live their story too. And that's like it really comes down to getting into the dirt, getting into the darkness, getting into the bad places. Because I can look at someone and I can know when they've been in a bad place or been in a dark place or actually have experience in something versus someone who's just regurgitating what someone else said. Like I think it's almost like we're some people are downplaying it because now we got 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds talking about life stories from a 40-year-old and a 50-year-old. And they can't have those experiences yet. Like some of them can, but it's rare. And so now it's become like this fluffified thing due to social media. And that can be good or bad. It's kind of how you choose to look at it. But yeah, we're all on this planet, this floating rock, trying to figure it out, put things together. And some people have done it by implementing action, and some people just talk about it because talk won't do anything. I could give you thousands of books on how to ride a bike, but if you haven't rode the bike, you're gonna fall.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really important. I think one of the things that really is a good action to take is, and I know that everybody's just so busy, but when you can dedicate or donate your time to your community in some small way, like when I was living in Texas, I was part of the Big Brother, Big Sister organization.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere I've lived, I've always tried to donate some time, even if it's just for a short period or maybe once a month, or just getting out there and trying to positively impact the community, so that we can help each other, because I think that's an action. I think that if our communities pull together more, it was like, you're a little bit younger than me, but when I was growing up, it was very common where everybody sort of took care of everyone's kids in the neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't let the kids disrespect you. There was sort of this code of conduct, and we took care of each other as a
Yeah.
community. And I think that we're sort of losing we're losing that, for sure, unless you're in a really small town somewhere in the Midwest or something like that, where that culture is still there and it's very strong, obviously. But I think in the bigger cities and in the major states, I just we don't really hear about it very often. So that would be one way to really, I think, influence that action. And you're right, you can write all the books on it. Um, I think social media has definitely made us more egocentric, for sure, where the world of selfies is just a big thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that hasn't, what's the point, right? I mean, it's kind of like, there's a word that's talk about psychology. There's a word that's being thrown out very loosely, which I don't like it being thrown out loosely, is like a narcissist, right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, my mom was a narcissist. Oh, my dad. Oh, I have a narcissist family, and blah, blah, blah. Well,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many shades of narcissism, but when we're talking
Yes.
about the pathology of narcissism, I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's people out there that have gone undiagnosed, but yet at the same time, people are behaving in a narcissist way, right? So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think, like I said, looking at you and following you on Instagram and, seeing what you're doing and so forth, I mean, you really are walking the talk. And I feel that I'm walking the talk as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I just think that it's so hyper vigilant now. Like everybody is just, it's like so acceptable now to really air out the dirty laundry publicly. And do you know what I mean? And it's like, there's
Yeah.
nothing really wrong with that. It's not like I'm judging that. It's like, what are we going to do about it though? I mean, you're saying that you've been, either discriminated, or that this didn't go right, or that person, but what are we going to do about it? How can we take that story and really encourage other people with that, because we've overcome something?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that
It, it, one of the funnier things too Because I say to walk within light is to be bright at all times. So you're light within darkness. And so I'll give a perfect example. It's easy to be positive when people are being positive towards you. But can you be positive through negativity? And
Mm-hmm.
again, it's not an ignorant positiveness, but it is if a man spits in your face or a woman spits in your face, obviously figuratively, what do you do with that? And some people will go off the handle, and that is okay because you need to learn through the process. But if you really want to be a light walker, you have to go through the experiences. You can't possibly be a light walker and just be born into it. It is the experiences. It is where you go in life. It is the things that you pick up. It is the knowledge that you gain. It is the actions that you take. It is the dealing with the positive people and the negative people. It is the unconditional love and saying, I love this person, even though they've done these things. It's not to say you are going to justify it, but it is to say you can still love them and see the greatness that they still have within them. And that's where, like, that's unconditional love to me, is human beings have their good side and they have their bad side. And if you can always see their good side, they'll be more inclined to start showing it more and more and more. But if you see them for what they are, then they're always going to be what you see. And that's the power that we hold too. And that has
Yeah.
to be trained. That has to be trained. That is not an easy thing.
Well,
Just like writing in
how do you look, how does, what does that look like to you then? What does that look like, you know, to you when someone walks the light? Because I think a lot of people that are listening might not understand that kind of language. What is, now you did explain, which thank you, you know, for, and I agree with you about sort of this unconditional love, or seeing the, you know, like namaste is, right, that word namaste means seeing the god or the goddess in you or something like that.
Mhm.
Sorry audience if you know what that means more than I do, but basically that's what it means, right? You put your hands
Yeah.
together and kind of bow and say namaste, you know, I see the greatness in you, or the god and goddess, and vice versa.
Mhm.
So what does that mean to you, walking in the light? What does that look like? How does a
It's a
person behave? How does a person behave?
it's a feeling, and so it's hard to explain it, but I am going to do my best. So a lot of the guys on the team, they actually call me this. I'm the professional optimist. I'm always optimistic, no matter what.
Yeah.
I see the good, and it's funny because it's like some people will say you're too optimistic, and I say, well, how am I too optimistic? And they say you always see the good in people, no matter what. And my rebuttal to that is, well, have they screwed me over? You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
to be positive doesn't mean to be ignorant. That is not what that means. To be positive is to love a person no matter what. Because I have no problem calling a person on their shit.
Yeah.
Like, I'll call a person on what they're doing, but I'm still gonna love them. I'm still gonna know there's something great about them. I'm not gonna, like, that kind of reminds me of, have you heard of the fat acceptance movement?
Well, I think I kind of have.
So you have a group of on both sides.
Yeah.
You have one group that's saying you should accept me for being
As
fat.
for being fat. Yeah. Now yeah. Yeah.
And then you have another group that says we're not going to accept you being unhealthy,
Exactly.
right? But
Yes.
here's my group. We are both logical and we are emotional. You think a fat person really just wants to be fat? Honestly? Like, honestly? But people put defenses up. So if you're going to call them on their stuff, they're going to get defensive.
Of course.
But if you look at them for the beautiful person that they are, they're going to do the necessary things to be as beautiful as they possibly can be. That is how I attack fitness most of the time. I have gotten tons of weight off of a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
but I attack it indirectly. I look at what they want in their life, because a healthy person, a person of true health, is going to do everything necessary to get as healthy as possible.
Yeah.
So it's like, ask the deep questions. Don't call them on one small little weakness that they have. Like that's what we look for. Oh, you have this disability. Oh, you have this weakness. Oh, you're weak here. Oh, I'm not going to pretend like it's not there. That's not the issue. People try and force everybody to do things. Force. And you can't take someone who's been functioning at a 1, which is like low functioning, negative, angry, hateful, and get them to function at a 10, but you can listen to their story. And when you take the time to listen to their story, they'll take the time to listen to yours. And they'll see, oh, wow, I never thought of it that way. Oh, wow, oh, okay, well, let me try this. Because human beings want to be healthy. They want it. It's in our blood. Some people just don't know how to get it. Again, it's that darkness. If you got a lot of darkness in you, it's hard to see the light. And sometimes you even feel uncomfortable seeing that light. But that's what living in the light is
Mm-hmm.
accepting people for what they are, strengths, weaknesses, and everything,
Right.
and reminding them that they can get stronger.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. I just wanted to have, a better understanding of how you define that, because there's definitely different definitions. There's more
Yeah.
woo-woo stuff out there that people say, just
Hmm.
do the light. And there's an actual practicality to that,
Yeah.
in many ways. So how do you feel about sort of, there's this in the last years, there has been this wave
I'm sorry.
of,
I'm sorry. It sounds like drilling. My son is playing on his little motorized thing.
oh, okay, that's fine. Yeah, we can hear him a little in the background, but that's okay. That's great.
Okay. I'm
Um,
sorry. What were you saying?
yeah, so there's this wave that's been happening lately about just really awarding people different things, and even maybe athletes and so forth. How do you, without having that training, or without, sort of giving people different awards and things like that, there's this, I don't have children, but I've been hearing from acquaintances and just reading in different newspapers and so forth, this sort of wave or what have you. Like you said, oh, we just have to accept people. People will, you don't have to set a high standard for people. That's okay. We'll still give them the trophy, or we'll do,
Hmm.
how do you feel about that kind of mentality, especially after what you've been through? How do you feel about that? Do you think it's appropriate?
Interesting. I think it's hard to say one way or another, because I think as human beings we are layers upon layers. So I think some things work better for other people. Um, I think it's very individualistic. Like, some people may be more sensitive than others. Some people may have a tougher skin than others. Some people, like, we're different. We're each different. Like, you look at the Olympics, and everybody has their own skill sets and gifts. And I think looking into a person and saying, like, maybe this particular person needs an award to feel like they're at least moving somewhere, doing something. And other people may want to have the competition of getting the award, but it's still the same result. You're still getting two people who have different circumstantial situations and moving them in the direction that they need to move into. Now, this is a difficult thing to do, I know, and that's why each individual has to be as cognitive as possible. And to be cognitive takes energy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely so. Definitely so. And so I don't know, as we're talking about, the losing weight and the acceptance, I really like the fact that we do accept people for who they are and where they're at, not what they wish they could be, and all of
Mhm.
these things. And I think that we definitely need to accept that. I am a type of individual who believes in being as healthy as possible in your mind and your body and so forth. And I agree with you that we have different layers of our persona or person. And so, sort of pushing through that, I think, is extremely important. So what do you think about personal responsibility? I mean, do you think that that's also part of what you're even teaching your son, or what you'll be teaching him as he gets older?
Oh, absolutely. I think responsibility is the biggest part of all of this. I think everyone, I was going to make it the 5 steps to success and happiness, or 5 steps to proper mindset, but I'm thinking of actually calling it the 5.5 steps. And the last step is 1.5, and that's take responsibility. I think that is the biggest thing anybody can do, is take responsibility. Put the responsibility on themselves more than they ever could. And this is from a man who's been married for 13 years and also have parents who have been married for over 25 years, I believe now. And it's like, put more responsibility than you normally would on yourself. If you think you're taking responsibility, put even more in yourself and see what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, that's empowering. Like, I don't look at, oh, I'm a black guy and this isn't fair and I need, okay, I'm a black guy. That's my strength. Or you can be a Caucasian person. That's your strength. Or a Latino. That's your strength. Use what you have as your strength instead of your weakness. You look at card players, and the best card players in the world, they don't always get the best hand, but they know how to use the hand that they're dealt. And
Right.
that's what you get.
Exactly. So how would you, in regards to personal responsibility, I'm a huge believer in that.
Mm-hmm.
That was inculcated to me as a child.
Mm-hmm.
So it was never not part of my upbringing at all. I came from very hardworking parents, and they had an impeccable work ethic as well, and responsibility. And so when you're, as for some people who might be listening to this podcast and maybe a single parent, or for example, just be a so-called minority, if you will, and struggling with the narrative that the media likes to push uh, onto minorities, quite frankly, especially Latinos and Blacks. I think Asians are a little bit different. Not
Mm-hmm.
to marginalize my Asian friends and family, but you guys, it is a little bit different. Not saying that there aren't any challenges. We all have challenges. Caucasian people have challenges too, but specifically speaking to Latino and African Americans or Blacks, what about personal responsibility? So a man or woman is listening to this podcast saying, okay, I'm hearing 2 people talk about this. How do I educate myself, coming from maybe not such a good neighborhood where self-responsibility was not really taught? And then also I'm kind of raising a kid by myself, or how to go about it. What would you say to that person?
Well, it all starts with knowing what your patterns are around people and around yourself. Because I don't think, and I'm not saying all the time, but oftentimes, specifically, and I say this because I have a lot of clients who have had this issue, I do something called active listening. I listen really closely and intently to why they're where they're at and where they want to go. And it starts with being responsible for knowing what your habits are. Because when you know what your habits are, then you can create a plan around those habits. Like, you can't say, for instance, I have a weakness for ice cream, so I'm just going to put a bunch of ice cream around me and willpower my way through this. You're going to lose. You're
Yeah.
going to lose. You lose that battle. So know where you're strong, know where you're weak, know if you have to do something specifically to build on some of your weaknesses, because you might, depending on what your goals are. Ask yourself, what do you want to do in life? What are you looking to do, and what do you want to accomplish? And then start tailoring and chipping away at what you need to tailor and chip away at. It's like if you want to be a business owner for a McDonald's, you don't go into the pool and just learn how to swim for the sake of learning how to swim. That's a waste of your time. So you go where you need to implement and practice your time. And that sounds like a way off statement, but people do this a lot more than they realize sometimes. Is they'll do things that they think are similar to the goal they're looking to accomplish, and it's nowhere near it. Or they won't focus in on what they need to focus in on. They'll do like a million and one different things, and they only need to focus on one or two things. It's almost like the more you simplify things, the easier your life becomes. So taking responsibility just makes things simple. Instead of saying it's the entire system, it's this, it's that, it's everybody else, you're saying it's you. So you're simplifying it. And you're living a simple life. And then you can figure out what plan and what strategy you have to do to make it come together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So you're saying really take a look at, if I understand you correctly, you're saying take a look at, if you're not where you want to be, or you're a single parent in a situation that's a little bit challenged, and maybe even the finances are not there. What you're saying is look for, write down, or what are some of your strengths and where you want to be, and then see if you can find outside resources to help you get there as well.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I say
Yeah.
the opportunities are in the obstacles.
Yeah,
And those are the hardest things to find for people sometimes, because the obstacles can create fear and doubt, but it can also create creativity and empowerment. And it comes down to how you're going to choose to see it.
Well, and I agree with that. And I work with a lot of people too. Like, I think environment is really key, right? To how all that conditioning is. And so it's extremely important. Like, so for example, I choose in my personal realm, I have very few friends, and I choose to be around people that can, maybe be logical and rational, but also are people who do have that optimism, right? Because I don't always want to be this talking about dreadful things all the time and, oh my God, nothing's going right and so forth, kind of be able to vent in a healthy way, get what you need to off your chest, and at the same time, learn and grow together. And so for the people out there that feel that they don't have that support system, I reassure you, there are outside resources. There's things called meetup groups. The good thing about the internet is there is so much out there. If you can't afford going to a gym, look at your YMCA, or find out, maybe even have the courage to go to a trainer and say, do you think you'll be able to, I don't know, you can always ask, for some type of help. And the worst thing that will happen is somebody will say no to you, but you won't know unless you try. Or if you have a small child and you're a single parent and you feel like your neighborhood is not, don't let your neighborhood define who you are, but take yourself outside of that neighborhood, drive or take the bus and go to a nice park, go to a museum, learn, go to a library, or find out. I mean, Cliff, would you say that I know you're in Arizona, I'm here in California, but are there opportunities for like for low income families as well? Are there opportunities for them to put their child, like maybe in a little like championship UFC or what, I don't know, for kids or something, or karate? Are there things?
Yeah, I mean, Sandra, you hit the nail on the head, because it's true. Like, we have more options than we've ever had.
Oh, good.
Ever had. And I'm just talking about in like each state, like in America, we have more options than we've ever had.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I agree.
Yeah. And it's just like, all right, what can I do?
That's right.
Instead of what can't I do?
That's right.
What can I do? Because it doesn't take a whole lot of things. Like, and that's what I'm talking about, is simplifying. Like, if you catch fire, we all know stop, drop, and roll. If they gave you 15 things you had to remember, you probably wouldn't remember them all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's keeping it simple, super, super simple.
Okay.
It's almost like we overcomplicate things.
Yeah, we do. We do. We do. Well, I think it's the I can't attitude instead
Yeah,
of, what if. And
yeah,
I wrote a blog on that too, and it's going to be part of a book I'm trying to get published as well. So yeah, I really like that you think that way too. And I think more than ever, it's important for all of us to find different ways. I remember when my parents divorced and there was no money back then. Of
mm,
course, we didn't have CDs and stuff like that, but we went to the library and we didn't have personal computers at home. And I remember being like, I don't know, 15 years old and going to the local library and just picking up records, because we had record players then, and just picking up records. And it wasn't like today, oh, my mom and dad can't buy me a CD or whatever music thing that I want, or whatever
mm,
device that costs $300 or more. But what can I do to become more resourceful? Pull back
yeah,
and say, what can I do, or what can I part of my thing has always been volunteer somehow, some way, either with elderly people, or so my way of surviving. And it sounds like you and I had, um, I'm not saying we have similar backgrounds, but I think that what makes us similar is that we do have more of that, what if, or we have the possibility mindset. And I think that that's what's really important. So
yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm really happy to hear that you're raising your son that way too. And I'm sure your wife, without neglecting her, is an awesome mom and lady and wife that,
Oh,
endorses
absolutely.
you.
Though the funny thing is, so I know I'm doing something right because I I can still motivate my wife and she likes to listen to me. And that's after 13 years of marriage. So I'm like, all right, I'm doing something right here. So
Good, good. Well, I hope you listen to her too. I'm sure she's got some good
I
wisdom.
do. I think it goes both ways. I
Yeah,
think that is what life is. And I think people will be more inclined to listen to you if you're inclined to listen to them.
that's
Like
right.
that's
That's
what
right.
following within the light is as well. It's
That's
just like
right.
you just bring people up. You bring
That's
people to
right.
their best.
That's right. That's right. I love that. I love that. And I definitely want to actually close on that note. And I think kind of bringing in a little bit of humor and what you said about the marriage, I think that that's wonderful. And, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope our audience will enjoy it too. And I will definitely have Clifford's information within the caption and website and all that, so you can reach him, and then you can follow him on his YouTube video. He's got a great YouTube channel. And so I invite all of you to do so. And in the meantime, of course, you all know how to get in touch with me. I have my contact information as well if you have any other questions. And in the meantime, Cliff, I am so delighted that you were part of this podcast, and definitely I love having conversations with you
Yes,
on
I appreciate being on.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And in the meantime, everyone, I'm encouraging you to live authentically. Y'all take care. Bye.
Have a great day, everyone.